Discovered my husband's secret mistress, now facing the impossible task of shattering her innocent heart with the devastating truth. 8 months ago, everything changed with one careless text. My husband's phone lit up with a message from someone named Henry, but the string of hearts and the words "I love you 333" told a story I couldn't ignore. My hands trembling, I managed to sync his text to our iCloud. That night and every night after, I scrolled through his words to another woman, each message a fresh betrayal. The cruelest twist is that she, his mistress, is every bit a victim in this disaster. She has no clue he's married. Even worse, he's told her we're separated and slowly, amicably working out a divorce. I braced myself for insults or blame, but in their thousands of romantic exchanges, he never even mentions me. Not once. I see now that he knows the oldest trick in the cheating husband's playbook is to paint the wife as evil. She's smart, and he knows she wouldn't believe that. How am I supposed to hate her? I tried, but the more I learned about her, the less possible it became. I've grown to care for her in a way that shocks me. She's so giving and genuinely kind. I read how she crafts handmade holiday cards every winter for the local nursing homes, concerned that some of the elderly might be lonely over the holidays. She sends him little poems, tiny odes of love tucked between the everyday chatter. He tells her he's stressed, and she's there immediately, wanting to help however she can. She's brilliant, too. I watch as she launches into these text deep dives, explaining her favorite topics with contagious enthusiasm. My husband is obsessed with the deadliest catch, and she once wrote him a long explanation about the sinking of the FV Destination, even weaving in her happiness that the disaster spurred safer, stricter regulations for fishermen. Her empathy rolls off the screen. Every line she writes, every photo she shares, she's so far out of his league, it's almost funny. He doesn't deserve to bask in her sunlight. I know what I have to do, and yet I've been paralyzed. I must confront him, demand a divorce, and, worst of all, break her heart for him. He will never tell her the truth himself. Facing consequences was never his strong suit. All the pain will be on me, to be the messenger who shatters her trust, who reveals the truth that knocks the wind from her chest. Still, I want her to know that I don't blame her. She was deceived, just like me. And in the aftermath, when her world comes crashing down, I want her to feel safe from shame. She deserves someone who loves her deeply and honestly. If she needs a friend, I want her to know I'm here. Soon, I'll send that message. I'm Bozo's wife, and I just found out he's been seeing you. I'm not angry with you. I know he told you we weren't together anymore. I'm filing for divorce now, so if you still want him, he's all yours. But I thought you should know the kind of man he truly is. You deserve better. I can't force her to do anything with the truth. I owe her that much. She gets to decide her own ending. My only hope is that she walks away from him, head high, knowing none of this was ever her fault. Update 1. I decided to call my husband Oscar for this, and the other woman Meredith. It all started unraveling when I found a lawyer and threw myself headlong into the divorce process. Before I even confronted Oscar, I decided the best first step was to reach out to Meredith myself, armed with proof that I was Oscar's wife. I wasn't about to give him one more minute to twist the narrative, no matter how much he wanted to try. I even showed her all the evidence I had and sent her my account of what had happened. She believed me without hesitation. The fallout was quick and total. She dumped my trashy husband immediately and wanted nothing more to do with him. I was always confident she wouldn't stick with him, not after seeing the truth for herself. I had this strange hope that, in the end, we'd stand together, two women making a fool out of the man who'd lied to us both. But everything turned out so differently. There wouldn't be a friendship between us, not even a sense of unity. I ended up regretting everything about this. Meredith was not at all who I thought she was. I was wrong about everything. After she cut Oscar out for good, she sent me a message that jolted me from any illusions I had left. She called me husband is trash, and told me she was sorry all of this happened to me. She was furious to learn she had been dating someone who got a kick out of toying with people, and while she sympathized with me, she made it clear her life would be moving on. I hope that you heal, she said, and candidly added that she hoped I would come out on top in the divorce, with Oscar paying a large alimony, if divorce courts still did that nowadays. She admitted she didn't really know how those things worked, but that wasn't the point. This message wasn't about her, it was all about me. She also had an interesting observation. She said there had been a lot of people bothered by her taking Oscar at his word when he claimed to be separated, not divorced. But for her, that wasn't a red flag. She'd known plenty of people who started dating while their divorces dragged on, and asking people to provide painful proof about a separation felt disrespectful to her. I wasn't about to antagonize someone just to make myself feel better, she wrote. If someone lied, it was on them, not on her for failing to demand honesty. Yet she admitted I was right on at least one account. She would have caught on if Oscar had played the evil ex-wife trope. But the whole topic of his divorce, the possibility of me, the real wife, just never came up as an issue between them. She realized she was learning her own hard lessons out of all this. Then she dropped a revelation that stung like a slap in the face. She told me straight out that if I delayed taking action for 8 months out of some misguided worry for her mental health, it was a stupid thing to do. It screws with someone more to be falling deeper in love for a longer time, Meredith said. She was, of course, upset and heartbroken to discover her boyfriend was actually a married asshole, but it wasn't the end of her world. She wouldn't have a mental breakdown over a man like him. What actually blindsided her was my response to everything. She found it deeply disturbing and almost unheard of that the wife, in this case, me, would develop an emotional obsession with the other woman, constructing some elaborate fantasy about her being sweet, fragile, and innocent. She pointed out that she and I had absolutely no connection besides this disaster with Oscar, and that it should never have taken me 8 months to put a stop to it. To make things worse, I hadn't even thought about contacting a divorce attorney until things reached this breaking point. She then reminded me that the first time she and Oscar exchanged nudes was already plenty of proof of his infidelity. But I'd continued to let them go on exchanging intimate images for months while silently watching in the background, without her permission. She took direct aim at my image of her. I had somehow developed this idea of her as some delicate, good-hearted person based solely on messages she'd sent to Oscar. Romantic partners are more vulnerable with each other, she reminded me, they aren't that way with other people. The person I thought she was simply could not be further from the truth, a truth that hit even harder when she pointed out my mistake in confusing her with someone else. I had found links to the FV destination post and handmade holiday cards for a local nursing home and assumed they'd come from Meredith. In reality, she said, she'd only shared someone else's social media links with Oscar, a content creator whose page she'd discovered by chance when looking up FV destination. She never made those posts. I had built up an idea of who Meredith was based on posts, handwriting, and bios that had nothing in common with her, except maybe a touch of similar writing style and a fondness for long sentences. I wanted to believe she was this person, possibly because it was easier for me to villainize or idolize her rather than face the truth. So, she spelled it out. The only reason she hadn't warned the content creator about me was because my fixation was solely on her. She was determined not to drag any more innocence into a nasty divorce. She said she was honestly offended by the way people were talking about her, as if she were inevitably destined to either stay with Oscar or run off and marry me in some twisted display of sisterhood. I'm either a fool that's too in love to see the signs, or a fool that writes off stalking as some empowering story, she wrote. Someone even said, poor girl, she's either too stupid or too young to understand that never meeting his family or friends is a sign her boyfriend is married. Oscar told her he was estranged from his family, and she didn't feel it was right to press him for proof or force him to discuss something so painful. She'd met his work friends, too, just apparently not ones who knew me, or maybe they had some kind of bro code going. She accused me of never asking her any honest questions. Instead, I set about sending her a flood of my own emotional baggage, using the feedback I'd received as proof that she needed saving. The only people who suggested she might not fit into the patterns I'd projected either painted her as a villain or just assumed she was hopelessly in love. Nobody stopped to consider that her response didn't fit into those narrow options. They were all too busy swooning over my revenge, all too quick to blame the cheating husband and forget that sometimes, there's more to the story, much more. They went so far as to create these elaborate backstories for what was essentially a fictional character. Not to mention, this fictional character was based off someone else's social media, someone who, mind you, doesn't even know that we exist. If I said I just found out I'm the other woman and his wife was now obsessed with me based off our text messages, the responses would be vastly different. People would be diagnosing her with various mental health disorders. There would be wild guesses into her family background, and probably even some made-up trauma to explain everything. It feels like all of the encouragement serves as a reminder that the person telling the story is always considered the protagonist, even when it isn't obvious they deserve that role. You see yourself as the heroic protector of some innocent girl, but from where I stand, you come off as a disturbed lunatic. You literally saw me naked with her husband more than once, and instead of taking any real action, you built a Shakespearean tragedy out of it. You need help. This isn't normal. I truly hope you can eventually make it through this and come out the other side, but I want no part in it. This whole situation is intruding on my life and sense of security. It has dragged someone else into it and put her at risk, too. I ask, respectfully, please never contact me again. If you try to reach me or if any of my private pictures make it online, I will take legal action. And don't make me regret not warning, username, about you. Leave her alone. Regards, Meredith. She's right. I need to find a psychiatrist to help me understand why I did all of this. I'm done talking about this now, and honestly, I'm embarrassed I let myself believe someone else's social media account was Meredith's. If the real person ever comes across this, I'm sorry. I really am. Everything I wrote was fake. At first, I was just bored and thought it wouldn't matter. But then it spiraled into something huge, far bigger than I ever expected. Update 2. I said I was done. The universe disagreed. A man in a windbreaker said my name outside the grocery store and handed me a manila envelope like a movie extra who wandered into my real life. Oscar had filed for a temporary restraining order against me. My name, my address, paragraphs about hacking and harassment, screenshots of the message where Meredith told me never to contact her again, and my own words about the iCloud sync, stapled neatly beneath a cover sheet that requested I be barred from disseminating intimate images. There was a hearing date circled in blue ink. I stood there with a bag of lemons in my hand like I'd been caught stealing sunlight. My lawyer didn't flinch. "We'll go," she said, and then she did something I didn't expect. She told me to bring my phone, my iPad, the old laptop that hadn't been charged since before the pandemic. "We're going to clean this up," she said. We turned off the sink. We pulled the cord out of whatever daydream had let me treat someone else's privacy like a TV show I could binge. I handed over the devices for imaging and felt something between relief and nausea, like coming up from the deep too fast. The courtroom was cold and beige. Oscar sat at the petitioner's table with the same performative exhaustion he used whenever a restaurant mixed up his order, only this time it was dressed in a suit. He didn't look at me. He looked at the judge with a face he'd probably practiced in his rearview mirror. When they called the case, his attorney stood and tried to make me sound like a headline. "Deranged wife hacks husband, harasses girlfriend, threatens revenge porn." My attorney stood and made me sound like a person who did a very stupid thing exactly once and then stopped. She didn't sugarcoat it. She used words like impulsive, unhealthy, and already remedied. When the judge asked if there were any other witnesses, the courtroom door opened and a woman I didn't recognize walked in, wearing a navy blazer and calm. Meredith. Her hair was different from the photos, of course, because the photos were never hers. She had a notebook and a short statement and she didn't even glance at me. She addressed the judge like she was in a work meeting she didn't want to be at, but would handle competently. She said, yes, she had told me not to contact her, and yes, she wanted that boundary respected. She did not want to be involved in our divorce. She did not want any images shared or implied. She was not afraid for her safety, not physically, but she was afraid of being dragged again into something that wasn't hers. She asked the court to make the limits clear and then she sat down. The judge gave me the kind of look you save for people you would like to shake and cannot. He denied Oscar's broader request but granted a narrow order: no contact with Meredith, no publication of anything intimate belonging to anyone, mutual no contact, between me and Oscar outside attorneys and the divorce. "Ms., he said my name, if you ever wanted a moment to make better choices, this is that moment." His gavel didn't bang. It was worse because it didn't. On the way out, Oscar finally looked at me. There was triumph there. He'd wanted the performance, and he'd gotten part of it. There was also something else, a flicker of worry, almost imperceptible, the kind a magician gets when he realizes someone has found the trapdoor. Discovery does that to showmen. My lawyer started with the bones, joint accounts, retirement, tax returns, and then found a line item for a storage unit I'd never heard of, auto-paid for the last 2 years. The lease had his name, a lock with a code, and a manager who shrugged and led us down a corridor of corrugated doors to the one that matched. Inside was an apartment in miniature without the walls. A garment rack of neutral clothing in women's sizes from XS to L, still tagged, a plastic bin of toothbrushes and travel-sized face wash. A stack of gift bags and blank cards, the kind you could write anything on depending on what you needed to say. In a banker's box, a ledger in his handwriting, dates, restaurants, amounts, initials that didn't spell Meredith. I thought I would throw up. I didn't. I sank down on a crate and read his arithmetic like a rosary made of receipts. There was a folder of Polaroids that I didn't open and a shoebox with concert stubs and dried petals that I did, because if you're going to have illusions, sometimes you have to kill them point blank. None of it made him more interesting. It made him smaller. A man who couldn't improvise a feeling without props. My lawyer took pictures for the record. "Dissipation," she said quietly, and jotted the word next to a figure we could, finally, quantify. There was a key fob on a hook by the door that didn't belong to our house or our cars. The manager said it was for a building across town, short-term corporate rentals. We drove there. The concierge knew him by his first name. "He's not due back till Friday," she said, as if we were late to a check-in. The apartment was hushed and aggressively neutral, a hotel room that had decided to commit. 1 toothbrush. 2 wine glasses, a drawer with a phone charger, a pack of cards, a single long hair on the pillowcase that did not belong to me. I did not take the hair to a lab. I went home and made an appointment with my doctor and asked for the blood work you ask for when someone else's biology might be living in your body rent-free. Everything came back negative, but the week of waiting was a prayer without words. I slept with the fear rolled up at the end of the bed like an unwanted dog. In the middle of this, an email arrived from a law firm with a name that belonged on glossy letterhead. Subject line: paternity inquiry. There is a kind of irony that's too sharp to touch. A woman, her attorney, not her, was asking to confirm whether Oscar was available for a genetic test regarding a child conceived last year. It wasn't Meredith. The dates aligned with nights he'd said he was working late and I had believed it like weather. I forwarded it to my lawyer and sat in my kitchen and watched the tiles until they stopped moving. Oscar, who had just tried to paint himself as my victim, was suddenly summoned to be someone else's father. He called me, through his attorney, because of the order, to ask whether I would be reasonable and agree to limit the financial requests in our divorce in light of his new obligations. I stared at my lawyer's email and thought about the storage unit, a mausoleum for other people's romance, and said that my reason had been outsourced to counsel and she could discuss it with his. I am learning to hand my worst impulses to professionals who don't live inside my head. There were smaller, stranger aftershocks. The content creator whose words I had put in Meredith's mouth did not get a message from me. I kept the promise I made in the courtroom, and then my lawyer sent a formal letter anyway that said I would not contact her now or ever. 2 days later, I got a single-line note through counsel from her lawyer acknowledging receipt and wishing me health. It was the most merciful sentence I've received from a stranger. I printed it and put it in a folder marked endings. Therapy, of course. The psychiatrist didn't hand me a diagnosis like a raffle ticket. We talked about control and stories and why I chose to look at pixels instead of faces. I said yes to meds for a little while because my chest felt like it had been sawed open and propped apart. I started to learn how to sit still without opening an app and prying at other people's lives. I bought a cheap puzzle and sat at my dining room table fitting pieces until midnight because sometimes the only thing you can fix is a picture that wants to be whole. And then the last thing I didn't expect happened. I ran into Meredith again, by accident, at the courthouse, both of us moving through security trays and belts and keys like people who had learned to carry only what matters. She saw me. I saw her. We stood far enough apart to respect every line drawn between us. She lifted a hand in a small, neutral greeting. I nodded. No speeches, no catharsis, no theatrical apology in a hallway full of echoes. Just two women who had gotten out of something, differently, and were now wearing their lives like clothes that finally fit. I don't know how to write a redemption arc that doesn't sound like PR. I only know that the days keep happening. The divorce gets carved up in filings and exhibits. The storage unit will be emptied by people who have no idea what those objects meant, and that's probably a mercy. If there is a child, the math will be done, and Oscar will have to learn a kind of responsibility that can't be bought in gift wrap. I'm learning to store nothing of myself in places I can't name. There is no protagonist here, just a cast of people walking off different stages at different times, trying not to trip in the dark. I'm still embarrassed. I'm still angry. Some days I want to send every florist in town a bill. Some days I make tea and go to bed early and it feels like a luxury I have earned. This is the last thing I'll say for now because my life is built in quieter rooms than this. If I had to name the new thing that happened, it isn't the court orders or the boxes or the emails with letterheads. It's the moment in that hallway when Meredith and I agreed, without saying anything, to let each other leave. It turns out closure is sometimes just walking away on your own 2 feet and shutting a door that stays shut. Update 3. I call from my kitchen with my thumb pressed into the counter until it leaves a half moon. The woman on the line is all protocol and apology. She reads me back an email I've never used and security answers that sound like someone skimmed my life from a shallow place. First concert. First dog. The application came in at 11:13 p.m. from an IP assigned to a corporate building I have already walked through, keyed into, stood inside. I don't say its name. I just write the numbers down and slide the paper across my table like I'm done touching it. My lawyer doesn't blink. Fraud affidavit, identity theft report, the FTC form, freezes with the bureaus, words that hit the table one after the other like playing cards in a winning hand. She files an emergency motion for injunctive relief stopping either of us from opening new credit with the other's information. She asks the court for a forensic look at marital debts opened in the last 2 years. If it's messy, she says, we make it as mess. At the precinct, the detective has the kind of patience you only earn by never believing a story you haven't seen on paper. I give him paper. The welcome letter. The IP. The screenshot of a developer page that confirms the building's Wi-Fi provider. He takes my statement with a pen that clicks the same rhythm as a ticking clock. He doesn't promise me an ending. He promises me a case number. I take it like a necklace I don't want to wear and put it in a folder. Subpoenas go out to his employer for expense reports. The reply that comes back is polite and ominous. They are reviewing internally and will respond pursuant to counsel. Translation: he's on leave. Or he's in a conference room under lights too bright with an HR rep and a lawyer who is not being paid to find him charming. He tries to reach me through proper channels to say I've escalated something that could have been handled between us. He says the words between us like a place he could still convince me to meet him in. My attorney replies with citations and a smile he will never see. The paternity test arrives, not as an email but as paper, thick and officious, the way bad news likes to dress. Numbers on a page that don't feel like numbers. 99 point everything. His new obligation is a sentence constructed entirely of decimals and the baby's last name. I don't have to be involved, except I am, because math has a way of rearranging the furniture whether you're in the room or not. My lawyer adds a paragraph to our filings about support calculations and the way courts impute income when someone's employment suddenly becomes fragile by their own hand. He wanted me to be reasonable. The court will be, for both of us. Mediation is a day in a building with carpets designed to hide coffee stains. There are vending machines with chips that look like artifacts from my childhood. We sit in separate rooms while a woman with a binder moves back and forth between us like a diplomat aboard a ferry. I hear his laugh once in the hallway, the one he uses when he's pretending he's not backed into a corner. It doesn't travel well through the door. He opens with benevolence made of cardboard. He offers to let me keep certain furniture I already own, to shoulder expenses he created, to settle if I agree to pretend the past 2 years cost me less than they did. My lawyer takes a pen and writes a number on a yellow pad that makes the mediator whistle through her teeth without meaning to. We are not performing generosity anymore. We are doing arithmetic. While we're waiting for a counter, my phone buzzes with a call from an unknown number that I don't take. A minute later, the front desk calls up to say there are flowers in my name and can they bring them back? I tell them to throw them away and then I put my face in my hands and laugh once, dry. The order says no contact. It does not include petals. I document, anyway. My lawyer asks the mediator to note that third-party deliveries are still contact when you're the only other person on earth who knows the right address and timing to send them to. The mediator nods like this is not the strangest thing she's heard this week. The storage unit manager calls me later to say the account is delinquent and there's going to be an auction unless someone comes. I don't want the mausoleum of his props. I want my name back from whatever cabinets he stuck it to. We go anyway, because sometimes the only way out is through fluorescent corridors. She hands me a small fireproof box that was tucked on a top shelf, dusty and obstinate. Inside are originals that do belong to me: birth certificate, passport copy, the marriage certificate I had assumed lived in our house. There is also a manila envelope with photocopied driver's licenses. Mine twice. His once. A second woman I don't know. In the bottom, a stamp that pretends to be a notary, bought from the internet with a fake commission number so bad it almost feels like an insult. I hand it all to the detective, who looks tired in a way that has nothing to do with me. HR at his job sends a letter through counsel. He is suspended pending the outcome of an investigation into expenses labeled client dinners that appear to be dates and rental invoices for team off-sites that were, in fact, weekends in the corporate apartment. They ask for all correspondence relating to financial abuse and fraud because they like their records neat. I am not cheering. I am marking a calendar of court dates that have multiplied like soap bubbles under hot water. Somewhere in the middle of this, my phone chirps a warning that an unknown device has been moving with me. Technology trying to be kind. I find the little disc tucked by the spare tire, gray and innocuous as a skipping stone. The officer at the family violence desk takes it from me with blue gloves and asks if I feel safe driving home. I say yes because what else is there to say? The judge signs a short addendum: stay away provisions now, not just silence. Consequences if the silence breaks itself and follows me down the highway. At our next hearing, his attorney clears his throat and announces an LLC. It is registered to my name as manager and agent. It has a whimsical title. It leases the corporate apartment and pays for storage and auto debits that come from our joint account and then don't. My stomach falls through the floor and keeps going. I pull up the Secretary of State's website on my phone and see my name smiling back in a font I didn't choose. My lawyer asks for immediate injunctive relief, removal of my name, and sanctions. The judge's eyebrows make a small house and then collapse. Counsel, he says to Oscar's side, I suggest your client stop building any more paper people out of his wife. We get the order. We get fees. We get a deadline for dissolution of a company I didn't know I ran. The world does not tilt back onto its axis all at once, but you can feel the shift when someone else finally has to carry the weight of their own handwriting. I don't break the order just because the universe keeps trying to see if I will. I do my blood work when they say to. I sit in a therapy chair that is somehow always the perfect temperature and speak in whole sentences without turning them into poems. I turn on the porch light at night and actually notice it instead of looking at a screen. The content creator gets nothing from me, no message, no shadow. Her lawyer sends my lawyer a note that says it's appreciated that nothing is coming, and for once nothing feels like a gift. I run into Meredith again, by accident on purpose of the city, both of us catching the same elevator bank at different times. She steps into a car as I step out, and our eyes meet for the length of a door closing. She doesn't smile this time. She doesn't need to. There is recognition without romance, the kind you save for people who survived a building fire from opposite stairwells. Oscar's counterproposal arrives the next morning in a PDF that tries to be magnanimous with my future. He wants me to help pay tax penalties for debt I didn't incur, to indemnify him from an HR clawback, to pretend an LLC was a misunderstanding and not a costume. My lawyer writes back with lines of text that start with the word deny until the paragraph is offense. If you're waiting for the twist where he apologizes, it doesn't happen. He files a motion accusing me of destroying the romance items in the storage unit. The manager's security footage shows a moving company hauling away his curated closet while I sign a receipt for a metal box and leave with a folder under my arm. The judge denies the motion without a hearing and writes 2 words that feel like a benediction: not credible. I spent a long time thinking closure would come in a shape I recognized: an apology, a grand admission, a new love that was measured in the inverse of all of this. The new thing looks different. It looks like a signature changing hands in a courtroom where pens are on chains. It looks like my name disappearing from a Secretary of State website in the middle of a Tuesday. It looks like a detective calling to say a charge has been referred to the DA and I don't have to do anything today except pick up groceries and remember to buy eggs. If there's a child, the math will keep moving and he will have to move with it. If there are jobs, they will live or die by policies I didn't write. My part is smaller and, somehow, harder. I close what needs closing. I keep what's mine. I lock the door with a key that finally only fits one home, and on the other side of it, there is quiet that doesn't feel like an absence. It feels like air. Update 4. The envelope from the IRS is the color of overcast. It has my name in a place I didn't put it and the LLC's whimsy in block letters like a joke told into a void. There's a number to call and a balance due that belongs to a business I never opened. The woman on the phone is careful, the way people are when a fire is on the other end of a door. She asks if I would like to place an identity theft indicator on my account and apply for an identity protection PIN. Yes. I say yes to the PIN like it's a life jacket. She tells me about Form 14039. My lawyer folds in a tax attorney who says words like innocent spouse and relief, and for the second time this year I find myself signing something that says, in legalese and ink, I did not sign this. The State Revenue Department arrives like a second act. A notice with sales tax estimates for quarters where no sales happened because the only thing that changed hands were lies. We file the affidavit there, too. Someone had used my social security number to make a company breathe on paper. We are now teaching all the paper to forget me. The detective leaves me a voicemail that starts with my case number and ends with a court date. The DA has filed unlawful tracking, identity theft, a charge with a long name about forgery and a notary seal that never existed. There will be an arraignment. I don't have to go. I go anyway and sit 2 rows back behind a man who is not my husband and squints like he might be from far away. Oscar stands when called. No cuffs. A suit that has seen more conference rooms than consequences. He pleads not guilty. His attorney argues about intent like it's a magic word. The judge reads the conditions as if he's reading the weather. No contact. No third-party contact. No devices placed on anyone's property. Surrender your fake notary stamp to law enforcement by 5 p.m. today. He asks about employment. There's a pause. Suspended, his attorney says, and the word lands like a stack of plates falling a floor below. The order extends, grows teeth, GPS check-ins, a weekly call to pretrial services. The assistant DA doesn't look at me and I appreciate the dignity of being a person who is not the center of every room she's been harmed in. The storage unit tries to solve itself without me. A certified letter the size of bad news says auction in 10 days. I call my lawyer with the notice and the words come out in a piece, my throat remembering the folder of Polaroids I didn't open and all the strangers who should never own them. My lawyer files for a preservation order and gets it. The judge signs a page that tells a lock to stay shut and appoints a third party to inventory anything that looks like a person was ever naked in that room. Sheriff's tape on corrugated metal is an ugly ribbon, but it works. A chain of custody form swallows the Polaroids whole. The detective carries a clear evidence bag with a handful of other quiet horrors, 3 spare trackers still in their boxes, a Ziploc sack of used SIM cards like spent postage, the ledger that made me sick now upgraded to exhibit. The manager signs. I don't touch any of it. I sign for nothing. HR at his company gives up being polite. A letter through counsel says terminated for cause. They mention mischaracterized expenses and misuse of corporate housing that reads like a euphemism not strong enough to lift what it describes. They want reimbursement. They'll take it from his last pay and whatever else the policy lets them touch. On my side of the ledger, Cobra arrives like a bill with teeth. I walk into my own HR and explain, briefly, without drama, that I need to trigger special enrollment because my coverage fell off a cliff I didn't jump from. They hand me a pen and a deadline. I meet it. The paternity case blooms into orders I read about in our filings and do not need to attend. There is a worksheet with numbers that do not care who lied to whom. The baby gets a line item that will become a life. That feels correct. One morning, my phone buzzes and tells me a device has moved with me again and my bones go cold enough to crack. The officer at the family violence desk is the same one as before and his eyebrows make a small tent of frustration and steadiness. We search my car like 2 people building a fort against a storm and find nothing. He tells me the notifications can lag, that old pings sometimes show up like ghosts long after the haunting. He adds the report as an addendum anyway and tells me I did the right thing. When I've gone home and taken my coat off, there is a note under my front doormat that says we can still do this kindly and a slanted hand that knows how I read. I don't touch it. I take a picture from inside the doorway, my feet never crossing the line. The officer comes back. The paper goes into a bag and the arrest happens the way bureaucracy makes it. A call, a car, a door closed you can't see through. One night in a cell is not justice and not even punishment. It's a chess clock clicked on for consequences to take their turn. At the next hearing, the DA asks for a stay-away radius that has numbers and street names and an address list instead of just wishes. Granted. He is suddenly a person who cannot stand within 300 feet of the place where I buy milk. He tries a different route. Through counsel he floats a global resolution. We both drop everything if I agree to stop making it worse. The mediator relays this offer with a face that has heard people try to name fires as misunderstandings. My lawyer doesn't smile. She slides our math across the table and leaves the other side to learn long division in a hurry. There is one new thing that feels like it belongs to me. A volunteer from the legal aid clinic that handles identity theft calls to say the IRS has placed an IP PIN marker on my account and that the state will do the same. She tells me that if I file anything now or ever, I will need a code only I know to prove I am myself. It is such a mundane spell I almost cry. In the middle of sitting still and doing everything right, something absurd and small happens. A stranger DMs a throwaway account of mine to say they bought a unit at auction and found cool vintage Polaroids and would I like to make an offer for a box they think belongs to me. Actually it's probably my boyfriend's wife, lol. The hair on my arm stands up all the way. I forward the message to the detective and he writes back with one sentence. Those items were not auctioned. Please do not engage, I'll handle it. A minute later, he sends a second. Thank you for not engaging. It shouldn't feel like a medal. It does. I run into Meredith again, and it is absolutely nothing. 2 people before the same elevator bank, my floor, her floor, The practice choreography of strangers. A man in a suit steps between us and presses 7 with a finger the size of a statue's. The doors close. I stand there and watch the numbers blink and think about how normal it looks when a life reassembles itself around the edges. We finish the settlement conference in a room that has a landscape print so generic it might be a ransom note from a meadow. We write about the house and the retirement accounts and a list of personal property long enough to feel indecent. He wants the wedding china nobody used. I let him have it and circle back to the bigger numbers. The agreement takes shape like a scaffold. My name off his accidents, his name clawed off me, fees, a statement that the LLC bearing my signature will be dissolved by a date that doesn't budge. He asks for joint responsibility for the tax penalties from that company. My lawyer points to a law with a boring citation number and says no for me in a paragraph that could double as a door slam. The judge signs the temporary orders inside a morning where the coffee machine in the hallway is out of everything but decaf. No gavel. A pen on a chain. He calls both of us by our last names, exactly equal, exactly plain, which is what I want more than victory. The detective calls and says the DA added a count for tampering with a government record after the lab confirms the notary stamp number belongs to a dead woman from a northern county and was retired 8 years ago. It's such a precise, ugly detail it feels like a splinter. He says there will be a plea offer. He says I won't need to say anything unless I want to, and even then it might be by affidavit. I walk home under a sky the color of stationery, and for the first time in months I have absolutely nothing to do for an hour except exist. Something tender and small keeps peeking its head out of my days like a feral cat deciding not to run. I do not call it hope because hope feels like a plot. I call it the thing where I make dinner and eat it while it's still warm. I call it getting my pin in the mail and leaving it in a drawer without rehearsing a disaster. If you want the big twist, there isn't one. There's a steady ratchet turning. There's a man getting fired because of his own invoices, a file at the DA's office moving through a queue, a storage unit sealed because a judge believed that some images shouldn't become anybody's entertainment. There's a state and a country of forms that, for once, did what they were supposed to do when a name was used like a mask. The wildest new thing is that I am not the one making anything happen. I get to walk the dog of a neighbor who's out of town for a week. I take back a Saturday and do nothing but laundry and a matinee. My name steps off a Secretary of State website, off an HR profile that isn't mine, off a lease for a building that no longer has anything to do with me. The paper people keep crumpling. I keep not picking them up.